Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And today I'd like to talk about something that began back in 1917, and this was with the Fatima Apparitions and the attending messages that were giving to the three children there. And one of these particular messages that was considered a secret was to be withheld from the public and then made available to the public in 1960. Now, why, I don't know, but I've got a couple feelings on that. One of the concerns that the Blessed Mother had in 1917 was the decay and the lack of leadership and the destruction that was going on in the church at that time. She saw what was coming, the perils and the thinking that was going on with the mindset of the bishops, the cardinals, and even the Pope, and the direction that things were going with the church at that time. And she basically, in lack of better words, she was basically saying, "Hey guys, you got to get your shit together, because this isn't what my son's church is to be about. You're getting off the path here." So I think she was hoping that they would self-correct. But she was having a lot of troubles with the character and the design and the personal, goals of certain people within the church that were leadership. Maybe they had different aspirations that were against what the church was supposed to be. They thought they'd become more worldly, become more of a prominent presence and force in making change in the world. And what they ended up doing was joining forces with socialists and communists and that type of thinking. And I think that Our Lady was concerned about this sort of thinking permeating the church and sort of diseasing what had been put together and where the truths were. And so now you've got a lot of different thinking going on right now, and it's concerning. It was concerning to her. It should be concerning to us. Now, what happened in that time? Well, apparently not much happened between 1917 and 1956, when Our Lady again appeared in Rome City as Our Lady of America to Sister Millie in the upstairs chapel at the property there in Rome City. There, again, she had problems with the character and the material pursuits of the priests and the bishops and the cardinals, the church in general. And she basically said at that time, I think, in no uncertain words, then it was another call to, hey, get your shit together. This isn't what we talked about. So 1956, she issued concerns about the status of the church and the priests in general, and their concerns about not doing Jesus' work, but fulfilling their comforts and trying to build things that were, in a lot of times in charitable foundations and things like that. We might call these people building hat racks to themselves. Anytime somebody puts a name on a building, that's another version of a hat rack. For somebody to hang their hat on, for everyone to know, hey, he did that. Jesus doesn't do that. And people who look for those types of things, you have to be a little bit careful about. Try to correct them, say, hey, thank you for your generosity, but when you put your name on it, I don't really think it counts for full measure in God's accounting base there, where I've said before, there's only two things you take with you out of this world when you die. There's the truth and everything you ever gave away in God's name. So if you go and you put your name on something like that as a testament to you, to honor your family and things like that, you're not honoring God. You're doing good work, but you're not honoring God with it. So think about that. Well, 1956 came and went, and the messages really didn't get out to the bishops in general. They got to one particular bishop, that being Archbishop Leibold in Cincinnati, who was the spiritual director for Sister Millie. And he did a lot of things to try to promote this particular devotion and the promises that it gave. And one of those things was he used his own money to build a plaque honoring Our Lady. He also, I think, used his own money to help with some of the initial printings. I'm not sure about that, but his gestures were genuine. And one of the things he did was he issued an imprimatur, and a lot of people are confused about what that imprimatur went to. A lot of people think that the imprimatur covered the entirety of her diary and the messages she wrote down. It did not. That imprimatur covered the prayer to the Immaculate Conception that Sister Millie wrote, and that was all it covered as far as the imprimatur went. This was backed up by Daniel Pilarczyk, who had been I think he was the vicar of Archbishop Leibold at that time, so he was in on that. And he said, no, it only addressed the prayer itself, not the attending messages. And so this is one of the things that the committee that Bishop Kevin Rhodes set up to study these apparitions and the events in Rome City and the truthfulness about these things, they had to study in on the messages very directly on that. And with the precedent of Archbishop Leibold having issued an imprimatur, particularly about the prayer, but not necessarily to the fullness of the messages in the diary, it set the groundwork for basically not issuing another imprimatur by this committee, but it set the path forward towards discernment and judging the fruits to see what's coming out of this. So that's what they're doing. So we're in this happy little middle ground, safely tucked away on the shelf here for discernment, along with the Holy Rosary and other devotions that are around the world that haven't been proven as being fact and evidence. But hey, we're looking at it and we're hopeful that this is our determination. But a lot of these things will never happen in our lifetimes. So 1956, Our Lady comes and she has concerns about our priests and bishops and the people in the church. 1956. 1960 comes around, and against Our Lady's direction in 1917, they, keep in mind there were many messages and secrets or whatever, or prophecies that were made by these children that were given to them by the Blessed Mother at Fatima. Well, the church took hold of these other facts or statements in the apparitions and the messages that the children were given, and they took those all to heart and they ran with it. But this one that was supposed to be released in 1960, Our Lady didn't want it released just to the priests and the bishops and the church hierarchy. She wanted it delivered to the entire world, all of us, all of her children. Not just the Catholic children, all of her children. They didn't do it. The church did not release the messages as Our Lady asked. They thought they knew more, and so they held back. 1965, Our Lady appears again in Garabandal, basically saying, why didn't you do what I told you to do? And basically gives in a nutshell what that message was. And the message was having to do with the structure and the behavior of our priests, bishops, cardinals, and popes. They were destroying the church. It was becoming communist. It was not being a church anymore. It had become a political faction. And this doesn't work with God. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. So the church, in its wisdom, disobeyed the Blessed Mother. And they did not release these messages, thinking that they knew better than the Blessed Mother. So, what has happened since then? Not a lot. We were told this is what would happen by Fulton Sheen and his programs. He had admonished us as the faithful, as the people of the church, to hold our priests, our bishops, our church accountable. Why? Because he said they will not self-correct. They will not discipline themselves. We have to do it. We have to watch. We have to ask. We have to be adamant about getting our responses. We can't get political responses. We need actual answers, because it's our church. Think about that. Who is in control? Who is running things here? I'll go back to a story that Fulton Sheen had told in one of his programs about a man who was having a lot of trouble in his life. And he was seeking discernment, and he was thinking, at home how to go about these things. And finally, his decision came that he needed to go to church, he needed to go to confession, he needed our Lord's help. So he went to church. He walked in. There was nobody there. The church was empty. Eventually, the sacristan came in, or the maintenance guy walked in, and the gentleman asked the man, he says, where's the priest? I need to meet the priest, and I want to go to confession. The man said, well, the priest isn't here today. He's out protesting. And the man says, well, will he be back? And the man said, well, yeah, he's got to come back. So the man waited there in the pew praying, hoping that for the quick return of the priest so he could have his confession heard and maybe receive communion, go to attend Mass, these types of things. Well, the man waited, the better part of the day, and the priest never showed up. And so the sacristan, or the maintenance guy, comes back in again, sees this man still sitting there, and he says, you're still here? He says, yeah, I'm waiting for the priest. He says, where is the priest? Why won't somebody tell me? Why isn't he here? And the man says, well, he says, what you're asking probably calls for a higher pay grade. In an answer, he says, I suggest you ask God. So the man returned back to his pew, and he started praying. He asked God, he says, Lord, he says, why have I been left alone here in my time of need? Where is the priest? I need an answer. Where is the priest? I need help. And with that, our Lord sent an angel to the man. And the angel appeared before the man and says, what is it you need? And the man says, I need a priest. Where is the priest? Who's in charge here? And the angel answered him. He says, the devil is in charge, and he's doing a damn fine job. So this was a story that was related back in the early 1950s by Fulton Sheen. Over 60 some odd years ago, almost 70 years ago. Over 70 years. What happened? Well, like I said before, a lot of our church has joined with the politics of government, and this all started back with the Council of Trent back in the 1500s. But what we've become is there's become this pursuit of a lot of work and activism within the church through these NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, have been doing a lot of work for the government, bringing in these new immigrants and things like this, whatever you want to call them, this insurgence of 20 million new people, and the troubles that they brought to us, and the responsibilities and the costs and all like this that are being shared by all of us. And then the repercussions in our communities, the civil unrest, the attacks, the heinous attacks. A lot of bad stuff got entered in with that, this Pandora's box that came in. So we've got all these NGOs out there. You've got Catholic Charities, you've got Lutheran Welfare Services, you've got every church known to this country right now set themselves up as some sort of NGO to get government money. They took COVID money, they took this other Homeland Security money and things like that. Catholic Charities, I understand, has taken up to $9 billion. And they're not being very open about where this money all went. How much went to going to other countries and gathering up more people to send them in here under this mantle here and thinking that they're doing social justice. What they're doing is they're breaking the bank and they're breaking the host of possibilities here. They're breaking us down to where there's not going to be anything left to give. You know, the story of the giving tree. You know, I think it starts off with the fruit and then the limbs and then the trunk of the tree, and then finally it's just left a stump that you can sit on. You know, it gave everything, and all that's left is a stump. We're pretty close to being a stump right now. So are we being responsible? Is our church answering these things? Have they done things to really clean up their own act? Or are we just putting more compromised men into the priesthood that were trained by our public schools and things like this over the last 20, 30 years? This is what we've wrought. You may have good, priests out there, but a lot of them are still infected with the early teaching that they received and these complicated thinkings that are going. This sort of sets the undertone for their service as a Catholic priest. And then a pastor or a reverend in another church and things like that, they all had the same sort of influences coming up. And many times they've lost their strength of character for the sake of convenience and trying to be loved and to not exclude somebody. Well, sometimes when you have the outlier out here, the unicorn, if you will, all right, we don't need to adjust our thinking to that of the unicorn. We need to make the unicorn realize it's really just a horse with a horn. Okay? So don't try to fix everyone else for the sake of one. Let's work on this one here and see what went wrong. Why did the unicorn grow the horn out of the middle of its head? Is it that unique? Our Lady is concerned about the rise of communism and what it does with the breakdown of the family and the dismissiveness of God in general, and her son in particular. She's calling for us to bring back personal responsibility. We need to have our personal responsibility to live a life of purity. They go together. Be responsible for things. Find esteem in the work that you do. Be proud of what it is you do. Sign your name to it. Be willing to sit back and show people around you, I did that. You're welcome. I did that with you in mind. These are things of purity. Our Lady is calling for purity to lead the world. She's desperate. We're running out of time. She said to put it out there in 1960. They didn't do it. She gave them 5 years. They didn't do it. And then she came back in 65 and says, hey, if you're not going to do it, I'm just going to tell everybody in the message. And she really distilled it all down. But she gave the church an opportunity to self-correct, and they still didn't do it. So what's going on with this? Who's in charge? We need to ask these things, and we need to get answers. And we need to hold our church accountable. We need to hold our politicians accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. We need to do the right thing, folks. Because if we don't call people into their personal responsibilities, we can say goodbye to all of our freedoms. Because the freedom comes at a cost. And it comes about being personally responsible. So, tough news today, but it goes with some of the things that are going on with our media these days. I don't know what the answer is, but I know it has to start with us. This is our church. This doesn't belong to the bishops. It doesn't belong to the cardinals. It doesn't belong to the Pope. This is our responsibility to God and Jesus' directive to us. And this isn't just about Catholics. This is about all the faithful out there, all of her children. I talk from a Catholic perspective because that's how I was raised. But there's lots and lots of other faithful people out there that are just as concerned about this. And what we need to do is use our voices and then guide it with our actions. This is personal responsibility. This is purity. So with that, I love you, and I'll be back.